As I sat in our bomb shelter, waiting for the hundreds of Iranian drones and missiles headed for Israel, I had one simple question. Why does Iran hate Israel? If I was making a likely list of Israel's enemies, Iran wouldn't be at the top. Just look at this map. Israel's wars were primarily fought against its direct neighbors. Iran is on the other side of the Arabian Peninsula. Also, the Palestinians are Arab. All of Israel's neighbors who fought wars against Israel, Arab. But Iran? They're Persians, not Arabs. Most of Israel's Muslim neighbors are Sunni. Palestinian Muslims are Sunni. But Iran? Shi'a. And the Sunni and Shi'a, they haven't exactly gotten along for, well, almost 1,500 years. And on top of all of that, for over 30 years, Iran and Israel were allies. Which might feel like ancient history, but at the end of the episode, we'll get a glimpse of how that history could make a comeback. So why does Iran hate Israel so much? The simple answer is that Iran wants power. Power against the West, or the Saudis, or Taylor Swift fans. Okay, I haven't heard the Swifties one. But I hate that explanation. In working on this episode, I wanted to find answers that went beyond the simplistic. So my deep dive into Iran's hatred of Israel led me to 6 reasons why these former friends became enemies. And the first is Iran's hatred of the West. Let's back it up. Check out this footage of people partying back in the 70s. Normal, right? Except these are Iranians and Israelis partying in Iran. See, shortly after Israel's independence in 1948, things were pretty chill between Iran and Israel. Iran was actually the second Muslim-majority country to recognize Israel. They collaborated on trade, and Israel's national airline had daily, non-stop flights between Tel Aviv and Tehran.
Huh? What?
How'd that happen? Well, even though Iran was a Muslim-majority country, it was run by a secular dictator. And the Shah was a big fan of Western values, like education, women's rights, religious freedom, but not a big fan of other Western values, like democracy, freedom of the press, not jailing and torturing dissidents. And yet, his iron-fisted rule of Iran was propped up by Western countries, which made the West very unpopular with Iranians who didn't like the Shah. And in the 1970s, that population was growing. Then came the tipping point. In 1979, a popular uprising known as the Islamic Revolution swept through the country. The Shah was out, and an Islamic cleric known as the Ayatollah was in, establishing the Islamic Republic of Iran. Okay, so given that history, I can totally understand why Iran's a little bit wary of Western influence, with how the West supported the Shah despite his brutal policies. And I get why Israel might get lumped in with all of that. But I was still left with the question, why does Iran have this special focus on Israel? The Islamic Republic of Iran wasn't just annoyed with the West's interference in internal politics. An important part of Ayatollah Khomeini's movement was to oppose Western imperialism more generally and push for the establishment of Islamic states, ruled by Sharia law. And where's the front line of the battle against Western imperialism? Israel. Iran sees Israel as the first step taken by Western countries to take over the entire region and destroy Islam. It's just the smaller version of the bigger imperialist problem posed by the US and other countries. Khomeini even had cute nicknames for Iran's new enemies. He called the US the Great Satan and Israel the Little Satan. So if Israel is the first foothold of the West's imperialist expansion, there's a logic to Iran wanting to put the kibosh on the Jewish state before things got out of hand.
Now I'm gonna put the kibosh on you.
Though, with 1,000 miles between Israel and Iran, things would have to get pretty out of hand. And this narrative totally ignores the Jewish narrative, that Israel is not anyone's colony, but rather an indigenous people reclaiming their homeland. For Israelis and their supporters around the world, they see Israel as a successful example of decolonization, a Jewish return to their ancient, tiny slice of homeland after it was colonized by Rome 2,000 years ago, a Jewish return that was begrudgingly supported by the West in the wake of the Holocaust and after a Jewish rebellion against British imperialists. But for now, Iran would prefer to
agree to disagree.
But I want to go beyond this whole imperialism thing and look at how Iran's hatred of Israel plays a part in regional politics. Because it's not all just about the Satan brothers.
Born to be bad.
Let's zoom out and look at the overall power dynamics in the Middle East. Remember, Iran went through an Islamic Revolution, and Islam has 2 main camps that don't get along. On one side are the Sunni, and on the other are the minority Shia. Not clear on the differences? That's okay. Lots of non-Christians don't understand the difference between Catholics and Protestants, and that didn't stop them from fighting 3 centuries of wars.
Nobody understands this.
But in short, after Muhammad's death, there was a power struggle between Muhammad's son and a group of political leaders called the Caliphs. The Sunnis went with the Caliphs, while the Shia went with Muhammad's son. And they haven't exactly gotten along since then. Today, the Shia make up only about 10% of all Muslims around the world. So Iran is Shia, a minority group within Islam that doesn't get much love. And after the Islamic Revolution, they had lost all their Western backing. In order for the new Iran to survive, the Ayatollah needed to make some friends, and fast. And rule number 1 in international politics is, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Cue everyone's favorite scapegoat.
Hello, everybody.
Khomeini saw the fight against Israel as a way to unite Shia and Sunni Muslims, giving Iran the next best thing to credibility with other governments.
Street cred.
Which ultimately helped give Iran a foothold in the region. Using Israel as a common enemy, Iran has successfully built a network of allies among states and militant groups across the Middle East. But while the Islamic Revolution wanted to unite the Muslim world, it ended up mostly doing the opposite, exacerbating divides between Shiites and Sunnis. See, the Sunni dictatorships out there aren't exactly on board with some Persian Shiites leading the Arab Muslim world. They're mostly into pan-Arabism, which not only puts Sunnis in the majority, but closes the door on the non-Arab Iranian Shia. But now that we've zoomed in, let's zoom back out all the way, because Iran has big plans. The Islamic Revolution isn't just for Iran, it's for the whole world. Here's a few choice quotes from the Ayatollah that I came across. "We shall export our revolution to the whole world. Until the cry 'there is no God but Allah' resounds over the whole world, there will be struggle. Establishing the Islamic State worldwide belongs to the great goals of the revolution."
Dream big.
But if every journey begins with a single step, Israel has kind of tied Iran's shoelaces together. From the Iranian perspective, Israel has played a major role in blocking its goal to globalize the revolution. And here I'm going to paraphrase something I heard from Israeli journalist Haviv Rettig Gur in a podcast from the Free Press. Link in description. Gur said that in the Iranian narrative, for over 2,000 years, the Jews were the weakest people on earth. After all, they're the little Satan. And as a first step to conquer the West, Islam must first conquer the West's weakest link, Israel.
Its problem with Israel is that Islam tried and failed to destroy Israel.
Now, I would think that Sunnis could also get behind Islam's domination of the world. And 20 plus years ago, apparently I would have been right. Because for decades, Sunni states quietly supported radical jihadists bent on world domination. But what I learned is that with the writing on the wall for economies that rely on oil, Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states have seriously cut down on the demonization of the West. And in many ways, those states are seeing their own cultural Westernization, something Iran is definitely not on board with. So we've talked about Iran's beef with the West, the US, Israel, Europe, and all those jerks who know Latin phrases, pretend to like opera, and wear suits and ties. And yes, Iranians don't wear ties because ties are Western. That's because Iran isn't just pissed about Western power, it's pissed about Western culture, which in many ways we Jews should be able to identify with, because some of our most formative centuries were spent fighting Western culture. First Greek culture, and then Roman culture. But unlike most cultures that lost their battle with the West, we survived by adapting. Go AEPI. But Iran's not on board with that, because to them, Western culture and Islam are oil and water. One central example of this has been Western-style promiscuity, aka women's rights. Several waves of protests have hit Iran in recent years, as Iranian women protest against laws forcing them to wear hijab. The regime has cracked down violently on these protests, accusing the West of trying to spread promiscuity in Iran. Women in Iran are also banned from singing or dancing in public, and their freedom can be restricted in many ways by their husbands. Israel, with its Western values like freedom and democracy and rights for women, is a giant Western thorn in Iran's side, which is just one more reason why Iran hates Israel. And while I've known about the culture wars for a long time, the next issue is one I only learned about in preparing for this episode: justice. What I learned is that Shiite Muslims believe strongly in a concept called adl, or justice. So much so that it's counted among the pillars of faith for them. Now, in the past, Shiites were resigned to the idea that justice could never be achieved on earth until the return of the Mahdi, a sort of messianic figure. From what I understand, this wait for justice approach developed in the wake of Shia defeats in the early Sunni-Shi'a conflict. Kind of similar to how militarism was largely beaten out of Jewish identity by the Romans after the last great Jewish revolt. But the Ayatollah decided to push for justice now, even before the coming of the Mahdi. For the Islamic Revolution, justice means actively supporting the oppressed against the oppressor. And the oppressor here goes way beyond just the Shah, who they overthrew. Even before the Islamic Revolution, Khomeini supported and trained Shia terrorist groups, and even the Sunni Palestinians. Iran's message of justice found a receptive audience among Muslims around the world, living under sometimes brutal dictatorships. This commitment to justice found universal appeal among both Sunnis and Shia, bringing together disparate groups in the bigger vision of Islam's reign spreading around the world. And while I think a lot of us could get behind this idea of justice, Iran's brand of justice isn't exactly what most of us have in mind. I mean, capital punishment for homosexuals, subjugation of women, or how about the fact that Iran supports these guys, the Houthis, who literally brought back slavery to Yemen? Okay, so regardless of its source, Iran's hatred for Israel is deep and dangerous. But it's really important to point out the difference between the Iranian government and the Iranian people. Many everyday Iranians have been speaking out in support of Israel and in opposition to the Iranian regime. These are really brave voices that maybe give us a glimpse of hope that the days of hate are numbered. With any luck, we'll find ourselves back in a golden age of friendship between Israel and Iran.